let's talk about something that will rattle many. So let's consider this. As I mentioned, the topic 200k property equity trap. Yes, even after then, why most Aussies look rich but stay stuck in debt. So consider a family made 200k in equity, property equity in 3 years' time, and they are still working full time. That's the case in most scenarios. Whereas the 200k property equity in 3 years' time, it's considered like 9% of growth annually. Let's maximize it. If they are celebrating it as success, oh, I got 200k equity, property equity in 3 years' time. If they are celebrating it as success, whereas I call it what it truly is, nothing but a modern day trap. Yeah, I will tell you why. You think you are winning, but the system is actually winning. And today, I'm going to show you, I'll show you the exact math and the truth behind all these illusions. Are you ready for that? Consider 3 years ago, your family has bought a property worth of 700,000. Fast forward, the realtor now says, oh, congrats, it's now worth 900,000. So you made a 200k equity. But what they don't really tell you is that equity gain is only on paper. So that is why I'm here to break down what is actually happening behind the so-called success. Let's be very conservative here. Family has bought a $700 property, the $700,000 property, and they have got a loan for 600k. 600,000 loan, they got it for 6% for 3 years, and they got an equity in 3 years for 200k. Yeah, and now they got an interest of 108,000. Why? Because 3 years 6%, so for 3 years they would have paid 108,000 interest 3 years time. And take the calculation further, and in the 3 years time, for the maintenance and the rates and for the insurance, they would have paid $21,000. And on top of that, the property management and the rental cost, $18,000 they would have paid in the last 3 years. And if they get that kind of 200,000 equity, property equity in the last 3 years, it means what? The capital gain tax in Australia, it is 30%. Do you know that? For that, you'll be paying at least for 30,000, means 30%, 60,000. The capital gain tax. Are you aware of it? It's not finished yet. And then if you're going to sell the property, the transaction agent and the legal fees, including while buying the property and after while going to selling the property, it will be around 20,000 Australian dollars again. If you have rented the property the last 3 years, even if the property gone for 550 Australian dollars per week, considering the maintenance, blah, 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 your net income is only 60,000 Australian dollars the last 3 years. Even if it is 550 Australian dollars per week, considering this one, the maintenance and other charges, your net income could be 60,000 in the last 3 years. Now, put all these together, your total outflow the last 3 years is 227,000. The net balance is 167,000. The paper equity is 200,000. Altogether, the last 3 years, what you have gained equity is how much? 33,000 Australian dollars only in the last 3 years. So this is what they hide from you. 33,000 only, approximately. And even if you consider the inflation, as you may or may not know, every single year on average, on approximately 3.3%, money is getting devalued. Considering that you earned 33,000 in the last 3 years, imagine that for a while. And you're still working, and if you are not selling the property, you got to pay for another 27 more years for payment. And if you're selling the property, capital gain tax comes in there, 30% capital gain tax. At the same time, you're still working full time to fund the loan if you're not selling it. That's not wealth. That's delayed struggle with better packaging. That's it. You might call it is safety, it is sound, it's secure, but it is delayed struggle with better packaging. That's it. So why do people are still celebrating this? Because they have been conditioned to chase paper net worth instead of present moment freedom. It looks rich. Absolutely, it looks rich. It sounds smart. on paper. But you know what? It is debt slavery disguised as investment. At the end, you own nothing. Yeah, until the bank says so. And worse, they define that very system that's making them to sell their future hours. That's why the wealthy know something the middle class doesn't. Equity means nothing. Whatever they portray, the realtors portray equity means nothing if it doesn't buy back your time. True wealth isn't in property, it's in presence. It's the time that you own, the cash flow. I'm not talking about the passive income, that's a different category. The cash flow to you for your family, which is not time tied. And on top of that, the fulfillment in your life. That is exactly what is true wealth is. Because money is not just wealth. And true wealth isn't just property. Here is a real wealth formula which I would like to expose it to you. The system never teaches you this. Wealth is equal to you have the cash flow which is leverage and scalable, irrespective of whatever the property market is. Wealth formula is nothing but you have the cash flow which is leverage and scalable. At the same time, you're living with time freedom and a fulfillment. That is what the wealth is. If there is no cash flow, or if there is no time freedom, or if there is no fulfillment, it's not wealth. It's just delayed struggle with better packaging. That's it. The golden cage. That is exactly why the wealthy build system that buys back the time. By that, they focus on the cash flow, which is not time tied. Whereas the middle class build portfolio, as what the system says, not the wealthy system, the system says, build portfolio that make them to sell their time. That is why you get stuck in the same loop, like refinancing, upgrading, renovating, upsizing, reborrowing, equity, thinking you are moving up. But in fact, you are sinking much and much more deeper. Let me tell you this open mindedly here and also as honestly. Equity doesn't buy back your time, it is just in paper, not progress. And if your kids barely see you, but your bank says you are doing well, it's not wealth. It's well packaged slavery. Because that is how most of the middle class sacrifice their lifestyle to look richer. At the same time, the wealthy live the lifestyle as part of getting rich from now. The poor call it as spending, but the wealthy call it as the wealth creation strategy. So the point is the wealth don't escape life to create wealth. They design wealth to enhance their life. It's the difference. Say, this is not anti-property. This is a pro-freedom. I'm not against property. I'm not against good debt. But the point here is, as long as your income is tied to the time, which is non-scalable, you can't achieve freedom in any way. Considering that, find a way to own your time, buy back your time, because you must find a way out of no way to own your time first before owning your possession, before getting caught into the good debts. I'm not saying good debts are bad, but the same debt, if you go and get it while your foundation is based on your time tied income, the same good debt becomes a debt trap. That's how most of, when I say most, 97% of the people are getting trapped, irrespective of whether they are in Australia, whether they are migrating to Australia. I've been migrated to Australia. I migrated to Australia nearly 15 years before. I was in the trap. But once I took the responsibility and ownership to learn about all these things, not from the financial schools and universities, not from the financial advisors, not from the realtors, because they don't say, and most of them doesn't even know. And even if they know, the bank advisors don't say this, because if they say this, they can't sell their debt. So next time someone brags about equity, ask them this: how much time did it buy you back? Because if the answer is zero, that's not wealth. That's just an illusion. Because this is your wake up call. Stop chasing the paper net worth trap. Rather, start creating the leverage cash flow which is not time tied, buys back your time. Own your time. Be present with your family, with your kids now, and be in peace of mind. That is what is going to give you the peace of mind for your life, and as well as the fulfillment. Also, by means of having the leverage cash flow, which is not time tied, that is where you can scale it. That's exactly what we teach, how we live as well. I was in that trap too on the other side. And by means of open-mindedly taking the ownership and responsibility, I learned how to escape and living a different way of life as well. And if you're determined, not just ready, but really determined to rise above this average mediocrity as how the system traps you and reclaim back your life, you know exactly where to reach us. Anyway, the choice is yours. Equity, chasing paper net worth, or freedom. You're all here to live our life to the fullest every single day, not just to accept and tolerate only the weekend, only life. Sing this in mind. Live your life to the fullest. We succeed together. Peace.